Welcome to the podcast, episode 4. My name is Austin Zest.
And Florian Rölke. Nice to meet you, everybody. Greetings and happy Easter as we record this episode.
Yes, exactly. And today we're going to go into some topics. We've been trying all these different topics, and this is like really useful for us to get our messaging kind of on point, right? Something I want to talk about today a little bit was plant medicine, because this is such a big thing now than what it used to be. Psychedelics are just not really like as a means of getting high, but as a way to connect with something that was missing inside of yourself, and for me personally, it was this addiction, and then it was this also just lack of connection with the world around me that was not at a materialistic level and that was not at a superficial level, even though I now find meaning in those things as well, including small talk and everything. Actually, I found meaning in all those things. But what I wanted to get into, yes, we've both, Florian and I combined, have had, probably over 100 ayahuasca ceremonies combined. I've probably had 35 or so, and you've had, I think, 70 or so ayahuasca ceremony sessions. I've done them in Mexico City with Colombian shamans, in Peru, in the United States as well with American shamans, which were just as powerful under the right proper training. And that's the thing a lot of people don't understand. It's very important who you do it with. It's just like anything can get a bad vibe, or how do you say it, like a bad connotation, right? A church, just because one church has a bad pastor and he's doing bad, shady stuff, hitting on the girls or sleeping with the women or taking the money out of there, doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. All church is bad. You know what I mean? That God is evil just because that pastor does something bad, or in the church there's gossip. So the same thing kind of like with ayahuasca ceremonies and shamans and stuff, there are bad and good. There are people who were trained properly and others who were not trained properly and have no business serving this very powerful, strong medicine that really has helped a lot of people, including myself. So that's kind of what I want to get straight off, for those who are listening about the ayahuasca and stuff and who are wondering about it. It's so important who you are doing this with. It's just like I said, when you go to church, who's the pastor? Is he qualified? Is he really living truly to what he is preaching? So all of that is very important. And before you do any type of thing like that, you need to really seriously, thoroughly research who you're participating, with these ceremonies with. Not just anybody, not just because they are a shaman and they create this incredible aura of, mysticism and stuff, doesn't mean that they are correct in what they're doing, right? So, let's start, Florian. I just want to see, like, what did your ayahuasca journey start, and how did that evolve, and what did you learn from it? What was the pain that you were trying to cure with this medicine, right? You weren't just trying to get high. You weren't just trying to see a cool vision and be able to come back to your country and talk about, wow, I saw this, and that, so I felt the divine. Like, what was it about for you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, bringing up the point that who you do that with is very important. It really is very important, in the same way as who you surround yourself with, who your friends are, who you let into your life, who you let influence your mind, right? And especially in these very intimate sessions where you're energetically very permeable, right? Where a lot of things can get to you. It's very important who you do that with. So for me, it started in a setting in the Netherlands. This is where I had my first ayahuasca ceremony in a cabin in the woods during winter. And in that night, we had about, 4 or 5 inches of snow falling. So when I opened the door the next morning, it was looked completely different than it was when I entered that cabin. Wow. It was wild. It was totally a wild experience. And what was the pain that I was trying to cure? Well, I quit university and I became self-employed. I started my own business. I wanted to help people with confidence, young people who had been dealing with acne or acne scars and confidence issues based on that, because I realized that I wanted to start helping people, become a coach, do live events, and I asked myself, well, what can I confidently help people with? What have I actually overcome? And back then I was 21 years old, and that was the first thing where I realized, okay, there are a lot of people who are 15, 16, 17, and now I'm 21. I'm not obviously a teacher for everybody in that way, but I have learned how to be confident in spite of that, and I felt that I could help people with that. And in retrospect, an incredible business. People are in pain, they pay for the service for that. People really struggle with that. There are lots of them, and a lot of people really need help, not by somebody who is a dermatologist, but by somebody who has been through that. So from all of the business evaluation points of what could be a profitable business, if you look at it from that way, because I knew I wanted to help people, that was not, but I tried to match that with something that I could help people with. So in retrospect, it would have been a beautiful business, but I could not get it done. Even though I had everything in my corner, I had a 6-figure starting capital based on money that I've earned myself and money that my parents and my grandparents laid aside for me for college, which I also had access to. So I had a 6-figure starting capital, half earned, half given. And I knew I was bright. I had good grades in school. I knew that that was an asset that I had, my intelligence, and that I can retain information, and I can write properly and speak properly. And I bought a camera and the whole kind of equipment, and then I was really asking myself, why is it not working? Like, what am I doing wrong? On paper, it should all come together. And then I realized these inner topics that I had to deal with. Basically, the way that I was living my life back then, I was totally isolated because I thought I just had to work even harder when something wasn't working. I tried to force it too much.
Right.
I didn't have any kind of human connections, although I am a natural extrovert and I thrive by being in human connection. And I tried to force it too much, and all of these were inner topics that I did not understand. And then came like some kind of eating disorders on top of that, where I felt completely out of control. My focus was dispersed, so I couldn't actually focus on the work ahead. And that led me to seek out all kinds of help through seminars, through hypnotherapy, to just try to understand, because I had this dream so much of wanting to do something on my own. And as I said, I had the money, I had the intelligence, I had a laptop and a good camera, and I had coaches who could help me, but like, I was standing in my way, and I did not figure out what the problem was. I didn't see it in my limited view back then. And so that led me eventually to ayahuasca, after having quit 2 or 3 projects like that should have worked on paper. I was like, man, what the heck is wrong with me? And obviously that's a horrible question to ask, because you come up with an answer. If you ask what's wrong with me, you find an answer. But it's not the answer that you're seeking. You got to realize it's the wrong question to ask. The answer, what's wrong with you, you find an answer, but you shouldn't be answering this question in the first place, because it leads you down a whole different path. And so in the first ceremony, I had this very, very intense kind of 2-sided ceremony, where in the first half of the ceremony I felt this kind of shell of ice around my heart, what I was living in before, this kind of self-hatred and being so cold inside, because I was like isolating myself so much, and I was just trying like to push even harder when something wouldn't work, and I would not talk to people about what was going on. That was making everything very, very cold. So I was going back through that, and for the first time feeling that, because I was living in it, I didn't see it. And in this ceremony, I saw it and I felt it for the first time. And then the second half of the ceremony, I was just uncontrollably laughing, like, and I remember, and that's how I end, because I've been speaking for like a good 5 minutes already. I remember the person that I was doing that with, an American, with a very, very deep voice, like huge guy, like coming up to me and placing his hand on my, he's like, brother, learn to stay in your, practice staying in your center. Because I was like, for the first half, I was like, going through my suffering. And the second half, I was like, my life is so great. in this kind of manic kind of cycle that I was living in my life, where it was like when things were working, I was like a pit bull, didn't want to let go of that and just trying to force it into existence. And when things wouldn't work, I would like hate myself so viciously. And he was like, brother, practice staying in your center. Because it was like, it was such a ridiculous manifestation of the pattern that I was living out, where I was for the first time really seeing like these patterns. And it was a massively impactful ceremony for me, that first experience.
Well, that's incredible, man. Yeah, that's incredible stuff. I mean, with the acne too, going back to that, I totally can relate to that. I had, I think I was 16. I think that was a big change for me as well. I was a good-looking guy. Before that, like I got a lot of attention from women, and just it was like I was quite confident. And then 16 or 17 years old hit, and then I think my brother had that, and maybe even my dad to some degree. I think my brother and I had it way worse, but I had it really bad. It just, oh man, I mean, pretty much overnight my life changed, and then I had to deal with that, and go to high school that next day or that following month with all of that. Like, oh man, and that really impacts you, and it makes you go inverted and inside, right? And then you all of a sudden feel like you are not, it just destroys your confidence because it's your face, and people look at you differently and respond, and they, there's people who are still happy with acne, and you don't look at them like, oh man, I look at that. But because you look at yourself like that, and you're a reflection of that, you then are not happy and then people respond to you because of your depression and stuff. So especially as a 16, 17-year-old. So I went through that as well, tried all these various medications that did not work for the most part until after high school, 19 years old, I did get the right medication, which was Accutane, and that literally overnight, or like in 2 days, it was like a medicine that just reversed it completely. Amazing. I don't know why they didn't give that to me at the very beginning, but I look at it as maybe it was a good thing. It was actually a way for me to kind of, maybe keep me kind of a little bit isolated for a little bit of time, and maybe it was a good thing. It just kind of helped me to it was like needed for that time, I was attractive. Women were still liked me. And maybe if it had been that, I might have, who knows, right? Had a baby at the wrong time. You never know. So it was just enough of a barrier to kind of keep me from like really, I wasn't ready for a lot of that type of stuff. So, but I still enjoyed life, and I found a way to really enjoy it during those years as well. And I found a way to be confident through that. And when the medicine went away, I kind of missed it in a weird way. It was totally weird. It was almost like, I almost, I don't know why, but that was like a 3-year period of having full acne, and I still have the scars as well. And it definitely affects you for sure. But look at it as a growing opportunity, an opportunity to find your confidence within yourself, even with that, because there's people all over the world who have serious flaws, right? They have cleft lip and this stuff. And the difference between the ones who let it impact themselves and then the other ones who don't, you treat people differently depending on how you feel. So there's people who find ways to overcome their issues through that. So just look at it, if you're still struggling with acne, look at it like a way to, like a university, as a way to overcome those issues, and not as a negative thing, as like, this is like a, rite of passage, so to speak, and that barrier, that's a way for you to overcome your own insecurities. A lot of that acne could be from trauma, from childhood trauma, and look at it like that, and look at it as a sign that your body is telling you, or maybe your ancestors or whatever are telling you, that it's something that you need to heal from within, so, or medication, in my case, the medication helped, but it was kind of both at the same time. But anyway, man, so it's just, thanks for sharing that, because that is a very important thing. And I can totally relate to that story as well. But as far as like, for me, the ayahuasca, in my life, I was very selfish, which is normal, right, for a young, but I, struggle with depression and all that stuff. And then when I found like drugs and pills and stuff, and weed. I just didn't go back. Hanging out with the cool kids, and I was so gravitated towards that because of the pain I think I had, and then the need for, just kind of that need to fulfill that emptiness, within myself. And then I found it. It was just like, man, all of a sudden I'm kind of the cool guy. I got the car. I'm hustling, right? Which was really cool thing to do in San Diego. It was just kind of, you had all this attention. And then I just thought that really that was what life was to only graduate in that lifestyle, and to do that in a bigger way, right? And that was what was glamorized. That was what was cool. But for me, it didn't end up like in a super glamorous way. I ended up going deeper and deeper. And then when I found heroin, it was just that pain kept going. And then you never think you're going to end up doing those types of things, right? Until you do, until you end up there. And for me, it was just, it was a gradual process. And then once that happened, all the glamour and all that stuff like went away. It was just, then you're kind of dead inside, and you're just chasing after the heroin feeling. So everything else just kind of goes away. It just completely takes that part of your soul away. And so I went through various processes, in my early 20s. This is all in my early 20s, and went into rehab. And then that really helped me. It really helped me for quite a long time, a year almost afterward. And, doing AA and all that. I was still very young though, so it wasn't like, I didn't experience enough pain, I guess. So I went back for another couple years, and then it was the point where I was like, man, Austin's probably, I was on my way to not really probably gonna OD at some point, or who knows, you're on your way to death at that point, really, as to so many others who suffer from that. And luckily for me, I was able to fly down to Mexico City because I had saw some documentaries about ayahuasca and ibogaine, and I my family had gotten some money from their parents or something, so we wouldn't have been able to do that beforehand. But they were able to help me get down there, and it costed some money, multiple thousands of dollars. I think it was like $5,000 or something, which is a lot, And but I was able to go down there and do this therapy called ibogaine therapy, which is takes away your withdrawal symptoms. But there's a caveat to that. You have to go through 24 hours of the most intense visions, most uncomfortable experience you can possibly imagine. You really are like, you die pretty much. You think you're dead. It just completely, and it makes you go through all these experiences in your life, all these, screwed up memories and all these things that you have to face that you're kind of running away from, these insecurities that you have, these weaknesses that you see in yourself, and that I always had that issue. Like, I thought people, like, I was so afraid of being fake, and it was like, or not being authentic, or people were talking about me and all this stuff, and it was just like from deep rooted insecurity, and just this, horrible thing. And not realizing that most people go through that for the most part. Even people who claim all this authenticity and stuff, it's like there's still always certain situations where they're going to feel this humanness. Nobody can escape that, by the way. But what you can do is keep facing that, and then you'll find your authenticity and who you really are. And even if some other people, for me, what it was like, I was out there type of guy, very deep thinker, and I had very hard time relating with people, and people would just thought I was weird guy, like, kind of like out there, so far out there, like it's very difficult to even have a conversation with this guy. I did have good friends and stuff who did understand me on certain levels, too, but to a degree, at a young age too, very hard to understand, like, geez, and I just had that. I was like a ancient philosopher in a young man's body type of thing. And it was just, I saw the world very distinctly, and it was very hard to relate to people. And so people would just think, so I would shut off. So people might think that, okay, that guy's either withdrawn or he's fake or just he's not. And I kind of was, because I had to kind of pretend to try to be in this world. I had to sort of be somebody else that I didn't think, whenever I was kind of myself, the world would sort of be like, hey, that's too much, and shut that down, which is understandable. I understand that now. It's just because I didn't have that kind of shamanic initiation. So had I grown up instead of the United States, superficial California, where it's all materialism, had I grown up in, freaking South America in the jungle, that probably would have been in a shamanic route. I probably would have been a medicine man, and it would have been, oh, okay, we know exactly what to do with you. We're going to put you in the mountains for a few days. You're going to do a vision quest. You're going to do all this stuff, in an indigenous, so like I had that kind of soul, and I realized that. And that was when I went to the ibogaine therapy, and that changed a lot of things. And I did ayahuasca ceremonies after that for the first time.
So you did ibogaine first?
I did ibogaine first before ever doing ayahuasca. Yeah, this was like a therapy. So that was like 2 stages. You do the ibogaine therapy to clean you up so you're not having heroin withdrawal symptoms. You stay there for about a week, and then you go deeper into Mexico City, which is another place called Living Clean, which was like, they changed the name by now, but it was a extended rehab center, quite affordable for what it was, for what it gave you. But they did like yoga, ayahuasca ceremonies, and stuff like that. And so yeah, when one of the shamans from Colombia came up, and he said, hey, you're I thought it was like, hey, I had manic depressive or depression and stuff, and that was kind of like my thing with him. And I was like, what is going on with me? Like, why am I so like this way? And he's like, look, man, you're not bipolar. So you have a sensitivity. You have a sensitivity, and it's like you're just sensitive to this outside world so much. So I wonder how many people actually really have that, and they just don't have their needs met fully on a spiritual level and just like an authentic level, because we live in such a fake world. So people who have this kind of a little bit of a deep, something different about them, it's so hard to cope in a world that is completely inauthentic. If you want to change that, Yeah, so then basically, then when I drank those medicine, that ayahuasca, and I'd been clean for like a month before I'd taken it, was doing, celibacy, semen retention, so I felt just felt very pure in my body and my spirit and everything, and I felt great. And during this time, felt truly my authentic self in this rehab and with the people, and was doing breath work, and I just felt like that was who I was. So that was just, wow, it was great. And then when I drank the medicine, the ayahuasca, he gave me a big cup. And yeah, I had so much power flowing through me, and I was just like, I went outside, I remember, and there were these fairies, like Tinkerbell, outside with the plant under this tree, and they literally said, hey, come over here, Austin, come on, and relax. And then I did that purge where you drink ayahuasca and you through. But I had purged, and I felt like it was an earthquake going on. That's how much energy that was coming out, and I held the tree, and I was on the ground with my other hand, and it was just like unreal how much of a relief that was. And then after that, I felt so good for the first time in my life. Like that was like true masculine. I felt true to my inner self, just completely, not in a weird hippie way. It was just like the best feeling that you could ever feel. And everybody should be able to experience that, to be able to tap into your true self. And there was no question about who I was at that moment, in those days to come as well, in those weeks to come. And when I purged and stuff, and then, some of the other people were like, hey, I've never seen anybody purge like that before. Like, it was just, because that was just so much. And then I felt like I was in this fighting with God, kind of, because it was like I was on the ground and I couldn't move, and it was just like, I was kind of yelling, and I was just like, but it was like so pure. It felt like out of just like this this child innocence, but it was just like I was pleading with God, like, what are we doing here? Like, and I felt like the pain and the weight of the world kind of in those moments, but it was, and there was nothing else. It was like I felt like I knew everything in that moment, but not in an arrogant way, like, hey, I know everything, like more than Einstein, nothing like that. It was just like everything was answered, but there was just this this moment of, me and just like the Spirit of God there, and it was like, okay, what are we doing? What and I was really like pleading, like, what is going on? I need some answers here, because this world is so heavy and screwed up, and I felt this weight for a majority of my life, still a young guy, mid-20s, right? But still, and it was just like, And I felt like that. And I felt like, I looked at the stars and everything, and I felt God's presence there. And it was just like something, it was just like, this is what it is, and you have to learn how to let go and accept what is going on, even with the heaviness, and to be able to let that go. And that's a very difficult thing to do, because we're trying so hard to hold on and make sense of things when that's not really for us to exactly understand and make sense of. So what the main lessons I started getting out of this was like, life is very simple. It wasn't really meant to be all, and you can get all super deep and biblical and stuff, like the knowledge of good and evil and eating that, and it's like, like we're supposed to just, and I feel like, and what I understood is like God is like living through us, and the point of the human existence was to really live in that garden, of kind of like not having that weight of the gods on us. So I do feel like, the Bible does have some facts in that, at least, facts according to how I interpret them as like there is something, there's something true to that. Like we somehow got this knowledge put into us that maybe was or wasn't supposed to happen or not, but it's something that we're meant to be here to live like just a relaxed life, and just like be and not be, have this heaviness on us. So I feel like that is something that's kind of unnatural. And through those ceremonies, I was able to tap into more nature, which growing up in the United States, all you see is violent video games, Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto type of stuff, movie after movie after movie showing you violence and blood and sex and just survival stuff. Nonstop. I just watched Rambo with my fiance. She's never seen American movies hardly until I've shown her. She's just like, wow. All violence, all shooting, all killing. And I realized that really, helped me grow. And I didn't care about nature. I didn't understand about the world that we live in. There was nothing of that. So after the ceremonies, that's what really helped me. And helped me to understand that there is another way to live, a little bit more natural. Then goes into, I thought, moving to South America, everybody was living like that, and it turns out that's not the case at all, but but that's okay. I thought like the indigenous lifestyle was like that. Maybe it used to be, maybe in some circumstances it is, but anybody who thinks like, the Native American lifestyle and the indigenous and stuff is all totally like that, that's definitely not the case. Like whatever the virus that's injected into modern day world has definitely reached there as well. People are not really thinking as consciously as you think. So that's kind of why I ended up in South America, and I was looking for that. I was kind of looking for that because I knew that was possible. I knew that there was a life possible about, a way to live in a more natural, more pure form, kind of like a hippie idea, but, more grounded. And I had experienced that and saw that. So this was, only eight years ago, which it feels like a lifetime ago. But since then, I've had to try to understand and make these ayahuasca experiences make sense in my day-to-day life. So when I went back to San Diego in the same environment, I kind of slipped back for a while, on and off, with the heroin and stuff, and sort of was still attracted to that lifestyle a little bit, but it didn't have the same edge as it used to, and I knew better. So it was almost like it didn't really work. And so I had to, so like there was a point where I just, all right, I got to get out of here. And, sometimes I'm still attracted to that lifestyle a little bit. And like, I see that. I mean, we live in Peru. There's all these narcos here, for lack of a better word. And you see kind of that kind of lifestyle there. But then when you start to realize like, when I start to remember all those ceremonies and stuff, that really broke me down. And like, I'm no longer like, even if I try to be that guy, it just doesn't work. It's so now I'm in a kind of an awkward phase in my life, I guess, where I'm trying to, 32 years old, and I'm, about to get married next month to a woman that I met here 3 years ago. She's a native, but not from like ayahuasca native. She's like real native. Her parents lived in like the mountains and very hard lifestyle. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But so yeah, man, that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out here. I'm in that awkward phase in my life, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, what is the real next chapter where I can still feel authentic to myself, strong, and kind of, I want that, power, and I kind of, but not like in a weird, powerful way, but I'm trying to figure this out right now. So, yeah, so that's kind of that. That's kind of what I wanted to get out in this podcast episode that was kind of on my mind lately. Yeah.
And we've talked about a lot between us about what do we do in order to keep the feelings and the lessons and integrate that in our day-to-day life. What did you learn on that? Can you share a bit about that?
Yes.
Because in order for it to really work,
Uh-huh.
you gotta adjust your day-to-day life, and you're not always going to feel in the way that you felt just after the purge, just after the medicine. So there's a huge component of self-accountability and self-responsibility of figuring it out, to take the learnings of the ceremonies and then live in a different way. What have you learned so far on that?
Man, that is so deep what you're saying. That is the most difficult thing about all of this. Yeah. So this is why you see, that's just why you see kind of hippies or whatever, or people in the medicine life, and they stick together and they build their own tribes, and they kind of then only talk to each other in that way, and they want to, hey, no bad vibes, man. We don't talk about politics. We don't, it's like, and then that becomes, they kind of then create their own prisons within. And I was sort of that way for like a number of years, because I drank this, and I wanted to continue that into the city and into my life when it was just like impossible. Like you can't, it's so difficult to, you kind of can, but it becomes very difficult to integrate that in your day-to-day life. For me, I had to just, I had to learn like boundaries and really learn strength, because like I think the medicine and stuff, it makes you so sensitive too. If you're already it does kind of both. It makes you strong, but you also then kind of open yourself up to more sensitivities as well. Like you experience things that almost like what people who have near-death experiences experience, and when they come back from their, meeting God and like feeling heaven, feeling perfect, no anxiety, and then they come back, they experience it like as hell, and they're like, gosh, I don't want to be here, and so you have to kind of learn how to turn that part off and like accept the fact that you're here, accept the fact that, okay, I'm in this life for a reason, I got to see these experiences. What can I do with that to help others, really, and because it's easy to start, it's easy to try to be selfish with all that, and you can become arrogant as well. Like you have all this kind of knowledge of the world and stuff, and it's almost very difficult to communicate with people who are maybe still stuck in religion and kind of still stuck in these certain mindsets where you've really seen what the world is and like what the spirit world is, and just like where we're that it's not that we have a big part in this. Each individual human with their brain and their spirit and their third eye and, the pineal gland and everything, like we are not victims in this thing that's all being created. So that's what helps me. Is just like, okay, I am really in charge of this as well. Just by me sitting down and praying every day, and I've gone through it, after I went super hyper religious for a while and just like reading the Bible and when I would swing from one hardcore to the other side, and it was like I couldn't find this balance, which I'm starting to find now, like a balance in all that, because you don't want to be super hardcore vegan, right? You drink ayahuasca. A lot of people, you're hardcore vegan afterward because you don't want any bad vibes or whatever. Then you're creating another prison for yourself. Oh, I don't want to listen to this song because it brings a bad vibe. Well, you're then creating another. You're not free again. You're creating this kind of another prison for yourself, and that's what I feel like. What we need to do is like ground ourselves and figure out and that the answers are not in you drinking ayahuasca and having these experiences with these beings and everything and God and all, like that can help you. That can help you to understand. That's like the foundation to, okay, at least if you were atheist before, or at least if you were hardcore religious and you were just like thinking in a kind of a limited way and you're indoctrinated and mind controlled in some way, that kind of frees you from that. You see like, oh, okay, there is a lot more going on here than I originally thought, and amazing stuff going on. I experienced, I see orbs. I've seen orbs since I was a kid, like these orbs floating around. Every day I see them. I see formations. Some of them line up with like star formations that I've seen in the sky and stuff, and I see them. And when I drank the ayahuasca, I would drink, and then those would turn into what they were, and then I could see what they were, and they were just like infinite powerful beings, And of course, from a Christian perspective, oh, that's demons and that's blah, blah, blah. I don't care what anybody says. This is my own experience, right? You know, you got yours, I got mine. But like, I don't think that those were bad. Like they're like your guides, they're like your soul. Your soul, these are like fragments of you experiencing maybe many lives, many experiences in life, and you're just collecting information. And they're here, it's like they're here to help you, I think, to evolve in this life. And this is to, not to judge other people, you know, but to like really start to understand that all the negative things of your life were to help you to grow in this life right now. And this is why I think so many people are kind of waking up right now as well. There's something incredible going on. Maybe this has happened maybe many times throughout history, but we've just totally been asleep for quite a few generations. We've just been asleep completely in the three-dimensional realm. You know, trying to find some spirituality in worship music, or in, you know, like Muslims bowing 5 times a day, and, you know, and I'm not like saying bad about religions and stuff, but it's like, I think a lot of these things have kept us so separated from each other and kept us so, you know, fighting each other and just like judging each other. And like, there's something there that has kept us from like really learning, hey, wait a second, this doesn't have to be like this. We can really be living in a much better world. And sometimes that's very difficult to have that knowledge and then seeing what's going on day by day. And even myself on my phone, you know, down like that, like a slave, you know, my head down, you know, looking at my phone all day, because I sometimes don't know what else to do, and I don't sometimes know how else to communicate this, and you know, and then, yeah, like that's the real thing that I see going, and feeling the pain of that, and seeing, you know, children being born into this world where there's no, you know, there's so much corruption, so much twists and turns, and you don't know who to trust. There's nobody to trust. Even though there are people to trust, but it's like, it feels that way sometimes for like a lot of people, you know, or the politicians. Even if you think one's good, you don't really know. You don't really know if they have a good agenda for you or not. And it's like, it becomes so much pressure that it's just the only way is to escape and submit to, you know, the quick fix, which is drugs or the phone, or right, you know, so or the food. Or, you know, like in the culture here in Peru, it's like food. It's like you can literally talk to people all day long about food, and that's it, and they're content. Hey, that's fine. I'm not content with that. You know, in the United States too, like, you know, hey, where do we get a lot of people too addicted to fast food, and it's kind of the same thing in a lot of ways. You know, so I wanted more out of that. I saw at 16, 17 years old, you know, as I started waking up to this stuff, or at least having this kind of seeing around me, this world is, dude, we need more. We need more out of this. This is not it. This is somebody else's imagination in their head that they've created what they think the world should be, so that they can control it better and they can live whatever their life, whatever they do and their thing. But there's definitely something going on like that, and I think everybody's aware of that now, for the most part. But what can we do about it? You know, that's still my thing. You know, because even getting rich, right? You know, I mean, we follow like Alex Ramosi, and we see these all these entrepreneurs and stuff. I don't, you know, but what is beyond that? What is it even beyond that? Let's say we worked hard, we make the $100 million, and it's like, is that even still going to be enough? And it's like a never-ending thing to keep the money going and keep, you know, the cycles, and we're doing all this stuff. That's like, I want to really figure out like what is the real true purpose, and maybe, you know, that is sometimes what I struggle with. You know, like what is beyond all that, and does that ever end, or do you have to find a way to be content with everything that is going on, you know, in this moment right now, good or bad? And that's something I'm working on day by day, you know, and trying to figure that out, trying to be okay with the simplicity, looking at it like, you know, we are master creators, divine, whatever, and we come down here. Some of us have more of that than others, and that's okay. Not everybody is exactly the same on that, and to be able to be okay with that sometimes, but maybe not. Maybe that is what is keeping the world the way that it is that we almost want to give in, we get tired of fighting for so long and tired of questioning and stuff. We just kind of, we submit and then just kind of give in, and then, all right, I'm just going to accept this kind of cookie cutter role as whatever, as this or that, and I don't know. I mean, we got to see, right?
That was an incredibly in-depth and very authentic share. And I do think that it's always easier to imagine the way that we want it, and then we go back to what are the actual steps that we have to take, because it always involves other people. If you're talking about profound shifts in culture and society, a lot of people have to be aligned and have to come together, and then everybody in their individual lives experience exactly what you said.
Sure.
Sometimes you get fatigued and you know that you want to be doing more, or you feel like you should be doing more, but at this point in time, that is kind of the option that you go for.
Yeah.
And then why is that, right?
Yeah.
And this is where we really then deal with the hairy details of life.
Yeah.
In the same way as we can say, yeah, let's build a bridge over that river. And then you go to the drawing board and then and the math and the angles and the structure and the material. And then you get into the details where you're like, it's nice to get the rush of adrenaline and enthusiasm of building the bridge.
Right.
But then we got to back this up with action. And
Totally.
I think this is what I've also realized in my life. That, I liked the idea that I had for my life. And then I got overwhelmed with when I was confronted with the action steps, and I didn't quite know what to do, and then I did not very much at all. Right. And so I think on that path, it makes sense to take it slow and thoroughly. I'm also thinking the same for my own life. It might take me 30 or 40 years just to make a very profound impact just within this tiny little 20,000 people town where we live here, because I realized for me, I'm going to start right where I'm at. And then I may have another 20, 30 years to do that for the rest of the world afterwards. But it's like, it will take time, because people live in the same way as we live every day. So they get up and then I have a few hours before they get hungry. And if you then spend your day between maintenance, right? Maintaining the laundry, maintaining the children, maintaining the garden, maintaining the food, and cleaning the pans and all of that, the day goes fairly fast. So we want to find the time for all of the people to basically contribute their energy and their time for this shift, and for them to also be receptive to it. Because they have to see it also in a way. They have to see the vision in the same way. And I think the best first step that we can do for that is actually being a living and breathing example of that.
That's
but
right,
I hear you completely on that it's you see these visions and you know what's possible, and then there are multiple decades in between that of actual daily actions where we don't immediately see the vision the way that we create it. But I think it's a worthy, I don't want to say it's a fight, because it doesn't have to be a fight. It's a worthy endeavor for sure. But what do you think is a way to convey that vision to people so that they see it too? Because if we just talk to people or like at people, they don't receive it. They got to take it in a way. So in some way, people got to have the same realization, the same moment inside of themselves for our words to be able to resonate. What do you think about that?
Yeah, dude, that I wish you asked me a different question, because that is so difficult.
Of course.
That's such a difficult question, because because I struggle, I struggle with that a lot in my life, and that's what sort of, I don't want to use the word repel, but that's like I kind of like people. I had a lot of good people in my life, and people like me and stuff, but it was like, okay, we can only take him in certain doses, because it's just too much. And that's why I really did a lot of self-isolating, and I felt, which I'm happy with. I'm okay like being, because it's just, I'm just there. I'm just in that kind of level. It's hard for me to just not talk about these things for a certain amount of time. I can for a certain amount of time, and then I just it's just like, okay, now what? I'm freaking bored. Life is boring as shit, doing this thing every day, like Groundhog Day, and working your 9-to-5 job and trying to take care of this just dumb stuff sometimes in your life. And I sound like a teenager, but I don't care. Like really, we do so many things that take out so much vitality from ourselves, and it's like, why do we do this? Why do I sit in front of the computer all? I know I'm trying to build something. I'm building things and stuff, and yeah, man, how do people get that? I think that it's through experience. That's why, like, it sounds something very simple, like just breath work. It's a physical experience. It's so easy. Anybody can. You don't need to do a crazy ceremony and drink these medicines that we've drank and that have given these huge realizations. People can just breathe and figure that out, and I think that breath is so powerful. That's like such a cheat code, or just that's something that's just like an undiscovered ability. That's why Wim Hof is so amazing. Wim Hof, I had the pleasure of meeting him so that was a big part of like the ibogaine experiences that I had. So my breath went up and down and up, and it was crazy. And I was doing Wim Hof breath work, and then I didn't know it, but it was like my whole body was vibrating and stuff, and it was because of the oxygen. I need more oxygen through my body, and to kind of experience this. And then that next day, after the whole ibogaine ceremony or therapy or whatever it was, I went on YouTube, and Wim Hof was on there, and I watched that video, and I was able to recreate what I had done that night before, that 24-hour vision thing, and I was able to recreate that. And then at that rehab that I was at in the ibogaine aftercare, ayahuasca aftercare, whatever, I was showing people that breath work, and it was so powerful. People were like, doing it with me in the morning, and like, I was doing the breath work. And then when I went back home, I went to Los Angeles and met Wim Hof, and I was able to tell him about my experiences and stuff for like an hour. We talked, and that was really important for me. It was so cool because it was like I could see, he was an older guy, and he didn't get famous until a lot later in life, and he really his wife committed suicide, and that was the pain that made him go out and find that answer, because he had that kind of deepness, and then he was able to really find a way to help the world like that. And I think he's helped so many people, probably millions of people, to overcome a lack of confidence, lack of self-esteem, to like real serious viruses or real serious sicknesses, right? So this is something that's always encouraging me, is looking at the lives of some of these other people who have really done it and have really made an impact. So that's what I would recommend. I throughout my life have always like looked at somebody else's life and kind of sort of tried to follow that, because I had not a ton of guidance exactly. I kind of did, but also kind of did not. I had guidance, but it wasn't like totally prepared for the world that I was entering into, and so so I always kind of like, I looked into like, rappers like Andre Nicotina. I just started watching his interviews again, just because like I was so into his music and stuff and his lifestyle that I kind of mirrored his lifestyle and really tried to actually sort of live like how he was living, for better or for worse. And I think it was a lesson for me at a time during my early 20s, and I needed that. I needed to experience some of those things that I just wanted to experience so bad. It was just like playing out a story in my mind to help me in this life, because it's like I was looking for freedom, trying to find true absolute freedom instead of slavery. It's like, really, how do we find actual freedom in this life? And it doesn't matter who's in charge in government and all that stuff, because it's like your freedom is actually inside of here and inside of here, and it's inside of you. And whatever circumstances go on, whoever's president, whoever's not president, whoever's doing this, it depends on you. And that's what I would recommend to people, is to find that. Find somebody who you want to be like, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong. Everybody does that. Guess what? Every freaking buddy has done that. Tony Robbins has done that, most independent guy, all these business. He's done that. I guarantee you. We find others that we kind of try to find somebody who you want to be like, and see what they do. And then don't do it to where you're like, oh my gosh, you're then a slave to everything that he does. And if you don't meet his standards, he's just a human too, or she, or whatever. They're just people as well. So don't like put them on this pedestal, like everything they do is touch this gold and stuff, like they're just people. But try to like see who you want to be like. And that's a very simple way, try to find somebody who is like doing something, making an impact on the world, and really do it, and realize that you actually do have that potential. And hey, if you're a person like who can't we've talked about that, can't finish one thing, has a very hard time. Oh, well, I start these projects and I don't finish it. Well, that's where then you can start to do some deeper work and focus on one thing. One thing. If that's just rapping, like start there. Or if that's, I want to be a business person on my own. That way your 9-to-5 job doesn't suck so much. Because then you're like, oh, my 9-to-5 job has purpose and significance. And maybe it's not what you want to be doing ultimately, what your soul is trying, but then it feels less painful because you're working, or maybe it's shamanic work, I don't know, or a pastor or whatever, and for me, I've pretty much wanted to do all those things, at some point in my life. But now I'm starting to, having had, you can do process of elimination by trying these different things, and you do process and like, okay, that's not really me, but I learned a lot from that. And it wasn't like a failure just because I didn't become a pastor or a full-blown, hustler, right? Who probably would have ended up in jail anyway, you know what I mean? Like, which I have been very close, and I have been in jail, but not like prison. So I got very lucky. But what I'm saying is like, do process of elimination. That's a way that you can start to find, because you need passion, you need some purpose. Otherwise, those thoughts will get too much, and then you'll feel like you're not doing anything in your life, and you'll feel miserable. So that would be what I would recommend.
Interesting. Yeah, I just found myself zone out for a second while you just talked about that, and realized how intensely I've been actually thinking about that. Mm-hmm. How do we actually convey that to people?
Yeah.
And how do we employ healthy and ethical influence over people?
Right.
Without, and walking this fine line, because when we get into these realms, we want to be very, very careful of people not getting afraid of these types of process, of really utilizing that in order to influence people in the right way for the better.
Right.
And I think it really starts with outlining the pain that they have, finding a pain that they experience in their lives, and then giving them actual, real solutions. Oftentimes it's just an explanation of why the situation is the way that it is, and the more precise we're going to be able to articulate the situations and the causation of the situation that they're in, I think that can give the entryway towards that. I really do apologize. It was just...
No, you're good.
That was just
you're
like
good.
really like hitting me, where I was observing or like getting the awareness of how much I've been thinking about this actually in the past weeks and months and actually years, right? Of trying to outline a path to give people these realizations so that they understand it. Because what we've been speaking about the whole time is how do we find a way to get more out of this world, to live in a better way.
Right.
And it won't happen by somebody preaching. And potentially there was even the realization that Jesus was coming to, where he was like, I just don't get through to people. It's words that it doesn't resonate.
That's right.
That's what probably he said, like, for the people who have the ears, let them hear. And people where it doesn't go in. Yeah. It's like, what can you do? What can you do? But I think we're in a different point right now with all of the psychological knowledge and understanding that we can actually communicate that in an even different way than just in a parable, but in a way that it's actually accurately describing people's real life circumstances. Right. So that they feel that the words make sense to them. It's not just a parable. It's not just in kind of a semi-hypnotic kind of story that you tell, but you're actually languaging people's real life circumstances. Anyway, what was the other point that you made? Remember?
No, man, I a bunch of. I mean, there was a lot of points in there. I think probably, but no, that whole thing with. I mean, Jesus. This is why religion and stuff just kind of bugs me, because it's so small-minded. And then even the modern day Christians and stuff, to me, it's so weak. It's so weak, and it's like, so judgmental, and it's just, it's like cliquey, And people are just hearing this very soft message. And I'm not saying the hard message like, hey, you're going to hell, you guys. I don't think people understand that either, you know. And I think exactly what you said. Even his own disciples, Jesus' own disciples, didn't understand what he was really trying to say. And if you believe, like in the Book of Thomas, like some of these other books that weren't allowed in the Council of Nicaea and the freaking 66 books that were created by the church, like, you know, and I'm not even trying to argue with anybody on that. I don't care what you think. I really don't. You know, like, because like I know that just what the Bible says right now, like, and like everything, like there's a lot more going on, and like it's been changed so many times too. Like I think Jesus, if he were talking to so many people in the church and stuff, would just laugh as well. Like, you guys just don't get it. You guys don't get it. You know, like life, you're meant to live your life not in this way to where you're creating all these barriers for yourself and stuff. It doesn't mean live in debauchery and just live like. But in a way, he's saying, don't be afraid to live your life in full. It's better to be, he always says it, it's better to be hot or cold. Don't be lukewarm, or else I'll spit you out. What does that really mean? Yeah. Does that mean like if you're like a Pablo Escobar and freaking you have a better chance of getting to heaven? Maybe, because then it's, you know what I mean? Because he's, you know, these people are living their lives completely in the full. Whereas people who are living, that's why I see Christianity now as just lukewarm, weakness. And when I see that in myself, sometimes I don't like myself. I don't like myself. I feel like I'm living inauthentic. So it's like, that's like why I've always had this kind of extreme from one to the other in my life, you know, because I hated that mediocrity and that kind of weakness. And it was just like, you know, it drives me crazy. Yeah.
And I think that might be a good and very important point to explore right now, because you said that both of us, we were rejecting the mediocrity. I also, in my life, I did not want that at all.
Right,
I was proud of the way that I was living in this kind of extreme kind of way.
Right.
Like
Same.
It said something about my courage, or so to speak, about my quality of character. I was very proud of that, right? And I manifested circumstances that were specifically like that. Where I now look back, I'm like, man, I've been protected many times. Some of the things that I've done were like reckless.
Yeah.
And
yeah, sure.
And so how do we bridge the living your life to the fullest in the extreme while at the same time not rejecting the mundane and the everyday, exactly what you said, that sometimes you just have to take care of stupid things. And will that ever go away? I mean, yes, we can build ourselves systems and employ people that could take care of that, but I'm curious, what is your opinion that you've learned through all of the conversations that we have and through your life experience now after not having drank the medicine for such an extended period of time, and for us really learning to live with the mundane, and actually taking care of the mundane? Because frankly, both of us, we haven't, we were rejecting that to the point that we weren't actually doing the things to actually pay the bills, for example.
Exactly.
Or to clean the house, or to do these very mundane things that just need taking care of. What do you think is the way how we can bridge that to reject mediocrity but still embrace the mundane?
Man, that's such a powerful question, because it's how do you, this is the process that I'm in right now. So I actually believe I can somewhat answer this, because because like, just like you said, you know, really in the last 3 years since my, you know, fiance, I've had to, you know, live with her, and now I have to start growing up, you know, and I was running away from responsibility quite a bit in my life, and you know, which was fine, but now like I've had to really, you know, grow up a lot, and that's been a good thing to sort of find that, because there's some people who never do, and you know, they're 40 and 45 years old, and that was scaring me, because I didn't want to be Mr. 25-year-old 50 years old. You know what I mean? No thanks. And I realized, like, okay, in order to, I have to, and a lot of it is your sexual drive, energy. We talk about that a lot. That's sort of, this is what another thing that bugs me about the church, because nobody ever talks about that, because it's like, everybody's afraid to talk about it. It's ridiculous. You know, this is like a thing that everybody has everywhere, and especially when you're a young teenager and stuff. No, parents don't talk about it because it's too awkward. Well, get over it. Your children need you to be adults here and start, because they don't want to face that stuff with them.
They don't have any solutions.
They don't have any solution. Exactly. We'll start finding solutions, because this is one of the most important things to figure out. We need to figure out where we can, because once you figure that out and you can navigate that correctly, that's where all your energy can come from. And you need to balance that out in a proper way. If not, it goes into just all this crazy stuff that we see now with society, and it's just ridiculous. Praising, weird stuff, like wasting time. I'm not even going to judge it and just say you're wasting a lot of time, in that. You know what I mean? It's not So, but for me, just learning the mundane and finding. So I've had to figure that I'm in a completely different culture. I don't speak English to my I'm getting married next my fiance. I don't speak English with her, so I've had to with her family it's a Spanish. So in a way I'm living I'm sort of two different people, which is sort of maybe what I've always sort of been in my life, so it's kind of interesting. And I'm trying to now bridge that. I'm trying to figure out, okay, who is authentic Austin within where sometimes I feel very inauthentic, because I'm working a 9-to-5 kind of square job, as they used to call it, square meaning you're like a regular guy, which was sort of like an insult, in the California where I live, to be square was like you're just a regular guy. And so I've had to kind of accept that, okay, that's okay. A guy who takes care of his family, that's not a bad thing either. A guy who's working hard, that's not a bad thing. It's just, I think it's a bad thing if that's all you are. And it's not even a bad thing, it's a tragic thing. If you feel like you've had this spirit inside of you to do great things, and you just decided to accept mediocrity. So what I'm doing is, okay, I'm getting those things, I'm getting the bills paid, metaphorically speaking and physically speaking, right? I'm getting those things, I'm getting the responsibilities handled. I'm taking care of business in a way that's okay, not running away from responsibility. Sometimes it gets boring. Sometimes I feel like, okay, there's indecision and it's a little bit difficult, but I'm figuring that out. Now, how do you find that other part, that other part? So you got all that handled, right? But what does your soul need? And that's where the phone becomes so dangerous. This is where this thing is very dangerous, because it's taking your eyes, you're looking into it all day, and it's taking fragments of your soul, and you're giving it your energy, you're cucking. You're watching other people travel. You're watching other people start businesses. You're watching other people make music. You're watching other people all day living their lives and doing funny skits and stuff. See what I mean? So that's what you got to find. Stop cucking and figure this thing out for yourself, because you can use the modern day age that we use as a tool, as a way to express your soul's expression instead of watching other people's doing that. So find that for yourself, because we have the ability now to do that with the phone. And so if you're going to be using this technology, you might as well be using it in a way that's going to really give your soul expression a place to breathe. And that's like ChatGPT and AI and all that stuff. It's these are tools. Sorry, I just spit on. These are tools for you to figure out for your soul expression to express itself properly in a way. So it's that's how powerful it is. So if you accept the fact that you're doing these things, and if you can find a real outlet for that, then you're not in vain. You're the boring ass stuff, taking your daughter to the soccer game. Maybe you love your daughter, but it's freaking boring as hell. You'd rather not be you'd rather be freaking swinging on ropes and freaking Tanzania, whatever. Maybe you have this in you. I think every man has that. We just watched Rambo last night. It's geez. Good. It does, because we need that. We need to find a way to do that. And if you, as a man, I think it's so easy when you get married and stuff, you start to kind of, you let other people kind of influence you, and then you kind of inauthenticate yourself. And that's something to really watch out for, as a man too, especially, I don't know how it is for a woman and stuff, authentic or inauthentic, whatever. I think a man kind of deals with that more in a way, because we have this sort of other drive, in us. So, but that would be my suggestion. If your life is boring, if you're doing your mundane stuff, really, it sounds simple, but just check off, give yourself a pat on the back that you've been doing those right things, that you've been doing those. That's amazing, because there are so many men who don't do that, who don't take care of their family, who run off and don't. So if you're doing that, you're handling your business, just be proud of yourself right now for that. Give yourself serious credit, because, to quote the Bible again, a man who doesn't take care of his family is worse than an infidel. That's scary. So if you're not taking care of your basic necessities and providing and stuff, you're worse than an infidel. So like that's bad. So you want to take care of that stuff. But like make sure you have that other vision there, and give yourself patience and time, and give yourself rest. And get away from the phone for even an hour or whatever, and sit and write and figure out what that is, and you'll be surprised how much things can come, because you've been accumulating so much information from that phone, from that thing, from all these influencers, from all these. We have so much information hidden in the hard drive of our brains and our minds that it's incredible. You'd be surprised how much information I have. Now maybe it's time for you to kind of tap into what can you offer now, and give. And maybe it's not in the technology. Maybe it is just starting a tourism company where you're at, or figuring that out, or growing food now. And it's just like, yeah, this is my time to buy a little plot of land and grow plant now, grow organic whatever food. I don't know. Just like to find out whatever that thing that's going to satisfy the quench the dryness that your soul feels sometimes. It's trying to shake you up. It's trying to wake you up. You feel dry inside of your soul. And you feel like you don't want to let your soul down, even though you're never actually going to let your soul down. That's how compassionate and loving our soul and God actually is. Because that other thing where we think we're letting things down and stuff, that's also an illusion as well. Whatever spirits is, and God knows how difficult it is to be here on this planet and in this time especially. But out of that, you start to find more love within yourself. So like, it doesn't mean, just give up. Everybody loves me. God loves me. I can just do it. But actually, out of that realization, you then now have the space to actually create more. So that's the benefit of that. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. And I do think these were great words to let sink in, and we should end on that note.
Sounds good, man.